We're going.
Okay, great. I'm Jeanette Tesmer. I'm the executive director at the Gateway Regional Arts Center, and we are joined with our two directors from the film Overland, which hopefully everyone has gotten the opportunity to see. We showed it last night at the Arts Center. People have been able to access it online with Elisabeth James and Revere Noue. I said that correctly, hopefully. And we're also with our fearless educator, Jim Grayson, who's in his office, and his student teacher, Other Jeanette, which she's just going to be called Other Jeanette probably till the end of the semester. When she becomes a real teacher, she'll still be the other. So thank you guys so much for being here. We're really disappointed we can't have you in person, but you know, this is a great alternative. So I know we have a Q&A that we've posted that you did with South Arts, but it's always such a great opportunity for us to have you guys talk to our community directly and be able to just ask you some more specific questions that not only relate to the film, but also back here to Kentucky. So first of all,
thank you for having us, by the way.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Just to start off, why falconry? And what really drew you to, was it the subject matter? Was it the characters? And then let's just start there, because I think it's just an interesting topic to even start with.
You want to go or you want me to?
Well, I think what comes to my mind, and I'm going to try and say things we didn't say before, although I have no recollection of what we talked about in the
Totally fine. Just
go
with it.
We quasi workshopped this to a high school class nearby. We're in Durham, North Carolina, early on when we were putting the film together. And I remember, you know, a lot of people think documentaries don't need to be a commercial product, but at the end of the day, we raised money to make this film, and at the end of the day, we need to sell it. And so you can pick the topic you want, but at the end of the day, we were kind of thinking, what is there an appetite for? And at that time, the top 5 grossing commercial films were like The Avengers, Star Wars, I don't know if it was Harry Potter, but all 5 of them had nothing to do with reality. Everything was like, okay, so the appetite for people right now is to escape everything that they know and be someplace else. Well, most documentaries don't take that approach. But when we found this topic of falconry and we thought, there is this whole secret world that's real. It has a science fiction element to it. I think Game of Thrones was also the big show on HBO. Wow, there's a whole world out there that's real, that's cross-cultural, and nobody knows anything about it. And it's also just very, very cool. And so we came about falconry in an interesting way, but we knew we were onto something because we felt like there was an appetite for it.
Yeah, we met some falconers many, many years ago in the swamps of Arkansas while we were working on a project looking for the ivory-billed woodpecker, which is a bird that's long believed to have been extinct and was potentially rediscovered. And just exploring the relationship between man and this wild creature, and the fact that it's been going on for ostensibly more than 6,000 years, and probably the oldest human-animal partnership that we have, became, you know, really a fascination of ours. But it was also, I mean, we learned about it many years ago. It was also something we would say, oh, maybe we'll go around the world and make this movie about falconry. And we would kind of joke to each other about it. And then one day we decided to write a grant. And when we got the grant, we were like, I guess we're going around the world to make this movie about falconry. And
just to interject, this grant is from the National Endowment for the Humanities. It's a 100-page grant.
Yeah.
You have to get 12 academic scholars to vouch that your movie will be of importance to the United States of America and its culture. And this was the Bridging Cultures grant. So it meant that you were making a film that in some way introduced Americans to other cultures, which our film was naturally going to do, but it certainly was a driving force as we were making it. But yeah, it's a very, very competitive grant to get. And so when we received it, I think we received it around Thanksgiving. and we had to be in the UAE in Dubai shooting by February. And neither of us had been to the Middle East yet. So there was a huge...
Yeah, it was just the process of finding our characters was a huge job, and we came about them all in organic but very different ways. And I'll never forget, we just sort of arrived in the UAE. We had done a ton of research. We'd met with all these scholars. We had a whole list of what you can and can't do. You know, don't point your feet towards people, that might offend them. And so we were also very nervous about accidentally offending people and gaining the kind of access that we were going to need to gain to do the film that we wanted to do, which people told us we would never get. Like, just flat out, maybe they'll let you film them while they're practicing falconry, but it's a very closed and walled society. And that wasn't our experience. I mean, we met Khalifa bin Mizran and his family our very first day of shooting on this movie. And we knew he was really special. And we spent the better part of a week with him on that first shoot. And by the end, we were inside the walls of the inner circle, and he's become a very good friend of ours, and his brothers are wonderful friends. But it was a relationship that developed over time, and one that developed as he realized that we were genuinely interested in something bigger than just the races or just the birds.
And I think that's when I started to feel like we had something special, for the exact reason why we're here right now. I knew nothing about this culture. I think there are a lot of stereotypes when you look at somebody who looks like Khalifa, and the idea that we would be able to have these experiences, build trust, and take those stories back and be able to share them with high school students in Kentucky was just a real honor. And you just felt like you were doing important work, because we were the only, and I believe the only, documentary crew ever allowed into this world, and the Falcon was the only way we were getting in there. It's kind of like if you went to a US senator and you said, hey, I want to make a movie about golf and your grandchildren, any chance you could work that out? They might open their doors. We weren't there to make any kind of comment about their politics or traditions. So we were and I think to this day, this film is very unique in its way of accessing cultures that are pretty closed sometimes.
Well, and you have such an intimate portrait of all three of these characters too. When you're watching the film, it's not like they're way back here and you're just filming, them and their gestures with their birds, but you're in their personal space, and you almost feel a kinship to each of them as they're just doing the things that they do on a regular basis, like feeding the horses or, taking your giant bird into a hotel room, which was hilarious, or, like talking with your kids or whatever, like just being able to show them on a different scale too, which is, you can tell that there was a kinship and a friendship between you and all the subjects as well. And that, I think, I'm here by myself today, and of course the phone is ringing off the hook.
I was about to answer it.
Everything that I thought I could do to make it not happen, but the phone is still ringing, so I apologize. But sharing this intimacy with these individuals is just such a wonderful, it guides the falconry even more, I think, because it feels like this is a very it's a friendship that you have with an animal too, and that is kind of a beautiful, horses are obviously huge in our area, and I think that people could really identify with a friendship with a horse that does a job for you, like racing, or, out in a field, as to a bird, that hunts for you. And I think that's kind of a beautiful portrait. So we've it's our second year of being on the circuit. And so you're one of our last films, sadly, for the year, but we've seen all different types of documentaries through us, but I think yours is probably one of the most that has the least like pronounced like storyline. There's not, you don't have like this like, oh, and then he was running for office and then the elections came in, and you know, you're just kind of putting it out there. And I'm interested to hear, you know, both of yours thoughts about connecting with the film, connecting with the characters, you know, not needing to have this, you know, like crust and fall that's huge, you know, like a huge crust and fall. You know, just thoughts on that.
You know, it's interesting, the two things. First, going back to that idea of sort of intimacy on camera with our characters and the way they sort of seem like friends. That was something that was achieved almost immediately, and it was by the way that we built our crew in the field and the way that we built our team, and then the relationships
Do you want to tell them what our crew consists
yeah
of?
So on our film team, we had Revere and I, and we're the directors and producers. We had a director of photography, a really talented British guy named Benjamin Pritchard. We always had a sound person. It was usually one of two different people, depending on what part of the world we were in. We had a co-producer who was a jack of all trades and could do everything from figure out how to feed us to problem solve when like a camera went down, to get us driving.
He could drive through 2 feet of mud in any car you can possibly manage. Like the skill sets are diverse.
And then we often, in every case, when we were traveling internationally, we also bolstered our team with people from the film community there, to make sure that our cultural gaze wasn't getting in our own way, to make sure that we were understanding things. We had translators, but we tried to keep our team really small, which is unusual for the sort of production value that we were going for, because we were shooting it with big ideas and big cinematic vision at the same time. So we had a crew that, if I can say, like, they just broke their backs for us every day. And we played hard and we worked hard, and our characters saw that. And, you know, I began to trust us because of the way that our team functioned. But then also, we never used a zoom lens except for when we were shooting, except for when we were shooting birds that were really, really far away, like in Azerbaijan when they're hunting. And a zoom lens is a lens that lets you, you know, hit the zoom button and push in on a shot. Otherwise, we were using what's called a prime lens, which are lenses that don't let you change your proximity to your subject. So we would decide for a scene, okay, we're going to shoot this on a 50mm wide lens, which gives you a framing that would be not unlike how you see Revere and I right now. But that meant that we actually had to be closer to our subjects, which is a word that's in and of itself odd.
You zoom with your feet.
Like, yeah, you have to zoom with your feet. You have to get in there. Yeah. And that decision changed not only how the film feels, but in time, the kinds of things we were able to achieve with the birds and with the falconers and with the landscape. I mean, so much of the film for us is not just about people, it's about places and about the connection they have to those places. So it, you know, whether it was sand blowing or wheat blowing or flowers or bees or whatever, you know, it gave us
Santa blowing?
Sand, not Santa. But it
Santa's in the background.
Yeah. So it's really like one of those things where the technologies that we chose to employ affected what the relationship and then your relationship as a viewer is in terms of proximity. And it's one of the things that I'm most proud of in the film in terms of, you know, there's a real, today's technology allows you to stand back really far and be an observer and shoot things that look like you were very close, but it never feels quite the same. And so by reverting back to this sort of old school way of filming, it gave us a different feel. And the second half of the question, you want to?
Sure. I think everything Elisabeth said is just super spot on. And I would add to that just a hint of advice to the people that I don't get to see before me. But, you can pay someone to do something. You can ask for a favor. But I think the most effective currency in a small team is passion. That people could see that we really love this movie. We were working on this movie. This movie took 5 years to make, and all of the effort that we put into it. That's why I think we got people's best effort, and why this film looks like a huge film, even though it was made by a tiny crew. Just basically, like, this is our production office, and then the question about the arc and the character development. Basically, we shot these stories. Each person we visited between 2 and 3 times, maybe Lauren a little bit more, and just sort of said, okay, we have enough footage. How can we tell this, and how can we unroll this film in a way that is familiar enough to people that they're not disoriented, but is unique enough that it serves the unique subject and characters that we were covering. And I think I think we had 2 main breakthroughs in the editing. And again, we edited this together because we were the only ones who knew the footage so intimately. One was that instead of, and the typical device both in literature and in filmmaking is that when you switch ideas, you switch places, or when you switch from one character to another, that character is in the new place moving on. And when we first did our cut, like a paper cut, we were kind of like, we want to go from this to this to this to this. We switched locations 75 times. And oftentimes that was not going from living room to bedroom. That was going from Italy to Dubai, or Dubai to South Africa. And it was absolutely jet lagging to watch the movie, because typically one uses establishing shots in between. So you'd have like this 10-second shot of the Kalahari Desert, and then Lauren doing X, and then when you wanted to switch, you'd have to do 10-second shot of the Burj Khalifa, and then so you see how that can be very arduous at the end of the day. So we had to figure out how to get those transitions to work seamlessly. And what we realized is that if we unfolded it like a conversation, so that Lauren was maybe talking about her relationship with her bird, and then Khalifa would pick up that conversation with his relationship with his bird, and then end it with his relationship with his father, and then Giovanni would come in with his relationship with his father. So even though the movie is progressing chronologically, it's progressing on the terms of their conversation with each other, so that even though they don't meet, they're occupying the same sort of mental space. And then we do have 2 sets of plots. In the middle, everybody achieves what they set out to do in the beginning of the movie. Khalifa wins his race, Giovanni gets to see the book, and Lauren trains Miles to be an effective hunter. So you would think, aha, we're done. But then you realize that's not actually why they're doing it. And so the second part of the movie is them actually pursuing the part of it that's important to them. So it's unique in that it's a dual arcing movie.
Yeah, I think that in documentary, especially in the last 10 years, as films have become more activist, social issue driven films, you either are making a film oftentimes about an issue, or if it's a character driven story, it's very, very plot heavy. And in some ways, our film is a reaction to that trend. I don't find those, I'm tired of seeing those stories. I love some of those films. I've made some of those films, but we wanted to do something that was more reflective of the relationship that we were seeing. And the fact that, as individuals, Revere and I are both very concerned about this loss of our connection to the wild, and this loss of our relationship to the wild, and it's being replaced by screens and by, our human contact is now happening sort of across cultures and in different kinds of ways than it used to. And so the film and its pace and its respect of the environment that it unfolds in is a result of sort of the reaction that we were having to the other media that was surrounding us. And, we made it pre-pandemic, but we started it, Obama was president when we started the film, and then that changed and it changed the relationship in interesting ways that we had internationally with our characters, and made us probably pull the film a little bit more towards conservation, a little bit more towards these bigger issues of life and death than it may have been under different political circumstances. But it's everything around us is always impacting the way that we see things, both in the field and then in the cutting room. And so to sort of sever it from its space and time wouldn't be terribly authentic.
I also think first of all, it's a beautiful, just cinematic, like, treasure of these wide landscape images. And to me, as being an art historian, just pulls me into these, turn of this century painters that are painting the, great outdoors and the Wild West and undiscovered countries. And it was just like, and then it zooms into these characters, which is this, little intimate portrait, which is so wonderful. Talk a little bit about your, and you touched a little bit about conservation and some of these other key aspects of it, but, one, how did you get those shots? Two, did you make that decision before you started filming, or was it kind of like oh my gosh, we have this landscape around us, let's figure that out? Or, was it something that was just kind of like ingrained, fully into the integration of what you do?
Well, so we felt like we had the benefit of being the first documentary ever to actually have a motivated drone shot. But motivated by the story, by the story. Drone shots have become these sort of more common things people are using as an establishing shot. And we were like, no, we actually can talk about flight and earth and relationship to it. But Revere is really the visual genius behind the film. He's a painter, and you should probably talk about the vision in terms of...
I knew there was painting involved. You can just tell if you go to any big museum and you look at any landscape that is painted from a specific angle, you can just tell that some of these shots are so equatable. It's like my next field trip. Like, we're gonna take everybody to a museum and be like, look at this shot and look at this.
Well, thank you, Jeanette. I think part of it is it's, so if it is painting, it's an instinct, and we would set up a shot. I would oftentimes run up into the field and just stand like this and like kind of wait for the tripod and everybody to arrive, and then making sure that there weren't distracting colors, so that you were seeing what you wanted to see. I had a really meaningful conversation with someone named E.O. Wilson, who's one of the great conservationists of our time, great thinkers, as part of that grant and the scholarship element. And I said, we were talking, and I said, what do you think we should do about things like power lines and guardrails? Mm-hmm. Is it ethical to frame those out? And he kind of thought about it for a second. He said, frame it out. We've seen enough smokestacks. Let's show the world that we could have if we left things, alone. So one of the reasons I think the film is beautiful is, yes, because of what we were able to achieve artistically, but you're not seeing the things that pull you out of it. And sometimes that was harder than others, like framing away and kind of with the drone, man, that is so exciting to do that, because you're literally able to see the world in a way that no one's ever seen it, because it can change perspectives going from 5 feet away to 400 feet away and 360 degrees. But we always try to make sure that those shots had a story. They told you one thing in the beginning of the shot, something else in the middle, and something else at the end, so that, like Elisabeth said, they weren't just patches. But yeah, and what you're filming is so gorgeous anyway.
Yeah. Well, in the drone days, were generally speaking fully separate days than the other filming days. we tended to do them towards the end of our shoots when we really understood the place and the landscape. There were certain times, like the scene with Giovanni at the castle, where we had to do them at the same time, and that was fine. But working with drone teams internationally is its own ball of craziness, because I mean,
Are there restrictions? Like, do you have to get a permit?
Different, it's totally different in different countries.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
To get a permit.
I mean, you're supposed to get a permit everywhere if you do.
We always did all the things we were supposed to do.
Always. But you're supposed to have a permit, and you certainly, you know, there are small drones that you can put up, but the drones that we were using were a little bit bigger, so no one on our crew could operate them. We had to have a team. And what ends up happening is that there's a drone operator and then there's a camera operator, oftentimes 2 different people on the same machine. And then there's Revere, who's got a very specific goal with the shot. And it's not like what they've been asked to do in the past. Like drone shots, especially if you're in a beautiful place, they think they know what you want. And then there's a language barrier. And in Italy, we had a drone team, both named Luigi.
Well, it was Luigi and John Luigi, right?
I don't know.
Pier Luigi.
Pier Luigi and Luigi. And they screamed at each other. That was their sort of way of operating. So like from the moment the drone took off from the ground, it was this very combative 2 Italian guys shouting at each other, and Revere going like, no, bring it down. That's not what I want. And so it would take, you know, you just had to be very patient. Drone days in the field always make me really nervous, especially once you add the birds of prey into the equation, because you just don't know for sure what's going to happen. And we always had the safety of the birds and the falconers, of course, first and foremost in the equation. So it was, you know, if we put this drone way up overhead in South Africa and we asked Dart to chase a lure, is he going to get freaked out about it because he wasn't trained around a drone? Miles didn't care at all about the drone. He was more familiar with them. Giovanni's birds don't really mind the drone, and the Emiratis use so many drones in training that their birds didn't care at all. But it was just it always made me nervous, because if something went wrong, it wasn't going to go wrong in a small way. Like, you know,
we're always told to just fly the drone straight up.
Yeah.
The birds wouldn't be able to chase it straight up. So we had our contingency plans.
Yeah.
That's what I was, even just watching it, I'm like, how are these birds not attacking this drone as also like a predator of some sort too? Like, you know, like here comes this big falcon like attacking your drone.
Yeah, I mean, it was nerve-wracking. We always made a plan with the falconers first. You know, they know their birds pretty well, and they know what they're capable of, what might be more likely to freak them out. I see that we're joined by Tyler. Hi, Tyler. He's a falconer. He can probably talk about, I don't know if you use drones in your training, but.
I don't use drones, no. I mainly hunt with hawks around here, but there are some falconers who will use drones, as you know, for training and stuff. There's always, just some kind of obstacle in the field, like that will distract, the birds from something. That was, I'm glad I caught up to hear you guys talk about the drones, because sometimes there will be dogs or, cars driving by or something like that, just little things that will distract the birds, and they'll just totally shut down while you're hunting. So I'm glad to hear you talk about how the drones kind of affected your all's footage and getting the birds to actually, getting some good footage of the hunts and everything.
Yeah, it was always an adventure. Do you have Harris hawks, or do you?
I have, yes, I have a Harris hawk. I have a red-tailed hawk, a wild-trapped red-tailed hawk, and I have an American kestrel as well.
Oh, fun.
So the Harris hawks, for those of you who are not experts in this, are the birds that Giovanni hunts with in the forest, where he uses all 3 of them. The Harris hawk, correct me if I'm wrong, Tyler, I hope I'm not, because I've been saying this for years, are the only bird that will hunt as a team. Is that,
you can hunt some, but that's kind of their classic nature, when
they use and that their parents train their young. So it was really fun to watch these birds kind of triangulate their prey. And
then you add the wolf dogs, and being in a deep, dark Italian forest, it was quite a day. We got very lucky that pheasant got spooked.
It's very, very difficult thing to film, as you can imagine, Tyler. Like, so much unpredictable stuff going on.
Unpredictable, right? I guess, yeah. So what was actually in the film? I mean, how many hours, I guess, did you guys spend in the field actually trying to hunt wild game versus what, we're getting actually in the film?
Yeah, I mean, I think that day in Italy, it takes place in a minute and a half or whatever in the movie. And I think we shot for 6 hours trying to put that together, but not 6 hours straight. I mean, it was a lot of, okay, this isn't working. What if we tried to set up in one place and different, like in, with Lauren in Oklahoma and in Kansas, when she was training Miles, we shot for several days and Miles didn't catch anything. And we were freaking out. We had 1 day left. She was freaking out because she was like, you guys came all the way out here. I can't not catch something. Everyone was kind of on high alert. And then we realized, wait a second, this is just like actual real life. You don't catch something every time you release your bird. Your bird is still learning. The odds are in the favor of the prey. That in essence, all of his misses were giving us a great cinematic gift, that if he caught something every time, there would be no suspense, there would be no chase, there would be no disappointment. And so it was one of those things where we just kind of had to really realize that not only do the falconers have to sort of submit to the laws of nature and the way that the prey is going to behave and the way the bird is going to behave, we had to be comfortable and agile enough to do that too. And that was a skill that we learned. We learned to stop worrying about whether or not we were going to catch anything, because it wasn't necessarily about the result, but it was about the process.
And I think we learned this too, Tyler, which is fascinating, is that the bird sits at the top of the hierarchy, and then the falconer sort of has to submit to the bird. The bird maybe submits to the rules of nature. We had to be at the very, very bottom, reacting and making sure we didn't get in anybody's way. And that scene with Lauren in the meadow where she's constantly hunting this rabbit that keeps getting away. I think it reveals a lot about how nature works. You would think that this 6-foot wingspan, huge taloned creature would take down a rabbit pretty quickly. But this rabbit just kept evading. But then you see Lauren's tenacity, and what is she getting out of it? And why is she willing to walk 200 yards every time the eagle gets away? And that's, I think, when people begin to realize that, she's got her unique passion that not everybody shares.
I like that aspect of it, how it wasn't like a National Geographic movie where you're just showing, the bird successfully hunting every single time. They, you did really kind of describe the hardships and, the training that's involved, the misses that happen more often than the kills. And that really kind of summed up, what falconry is kind of all about. It really kind of painted a good, accurate picture. Because a lot of people think you just go out there and you put game in the bag and call it a day, but really there's a lot of training, hardships, misses, figuring stuff out, failures that you learn from, and you kind of try new things. Like when Dart was up in the tree and she couldn't get him to come down, and she was trying. We've all had a bird that quirky for whatever reason wouldn't come down or wouldn't come. You train them for months and you expect that reaction to happen, but then sometimes you never know. And so I think you have really painted a good picture that is not just go out and get them kind of sport, and it's there's a lot of failures involved, and that's what you learn from, and then ultimately you do have that success, and that makes the success even better, really.
Yeah. So hold on just a second. I'm going to interrupt just so I can introduce Tyler and Jared that have just popped in on here. They're the president and vice president of the Kentucky Falconry Association. So thank you both for joining us. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to, as people pop in, just let as the recording gets further, who you all are.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah. No, thank you for having us, Jeanette.
Yeah, it's always nerve-wracking for us to know that falconers have watched the movie, because they are, cantankerous bunch and opinionated. And so Oh, we appreciate that you took the time, and it's been such an interesting experience for us to meet so many falconers around the world. There's only 3 that are featured in the film, but we have met many, many more, and it's not a unilaterally, people do it for different reasons. People practice it in different ways. And one of the things that we were looking for when we sort of chose who would be in the film was a certain standard of ethics in their hunting, and a certain, like, we didn't feel comfortable using like bagged game or releasing game for the benefit of the film, which is something that many nature films will do. So we didn't want to set up hunts that, were a sure bet for the bird, or a surer bet for the bird just for the sake of the film, which, especially in the UAE, when we met falconers outside of Khalifa's family, they were like, here, we'll just release this pigeon and then you can have your shot. And we were like, well, no, that's not very fair for the pigeon or the duck or whatever it is that and if it gets away, we're releasing a duck into a desert. Like, that's almost worse. So
I think too, one of the elements there is trust. That all of our falconers had to trust that we would portray their craft authentically. And you mentioned about Lauren with dart stuck in the tree. She wasn't really wild about including that in the movie for maybe reasons that may be obvious to you. But every falconer says it always happens. Our birds get stuck in the tree and they don't come down. So she finally sort of came to the realization that her falconry peers would not judge her as being a bad falconer because this crowned eagle decided to spend 3 hours in the tree. But our deal was that we would want to be able to watch the film next to our falconers, and for them to be proud, maybe uncomfortable from time to time, but ultimately proud of the project. And we think their falconry comes off pretty well in the movie. Hopefully you feel that way, Tyler.
Yeah, no, I think, it definitely made it more real to, like I was saying, to show kind of the struggles and, some of the, kind of how hard, it can be, definitely. And I think y'all painted a pretty good picture of everybody.
Absolutely.
So Tyler and Jared, now that we have you on here, I'm just going to ask you guys and Elisabeth and Revere, jump in if you have some connection too. But just from, because we're bringing it back home now to Kentucky, what, and you touched a little bit on how the film has connected to things you've experienced, problems you've had to solve, etc. But what does the kind of state of falconry look like in Kentucky? What does your organization hope to, educate the public on? And just a little bit about, can you use a film like Overland as an educational tool almost for individuals that kind of don't really know what you do and why you do it?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, one of the great things about falconry is that it's not, I guess, pigeonholed into one specific thing that you're doing. I mean, as your film shows and what falconry is, it's just, there's so many things you can do with it. So many different kind of birds you can fly, so many different kind of quarry you can hunt. And that depends on, that all depends really on where you are in the world. I mean, versus, if you're out west versus here in Kentucky, where, we have a lot of hardwood forests, some open, fields, agriculture, stuff like that. Nothing really as beautiful as what you guys are filming in Africa, in Europe and everything. But so our falconry, I guess, is a little bit different in that regard. For instance, America is the only country where you can trap wild birds and use them for falconry. I trapped a juvenile red-tailed hawk back in October, and I've been primarily hunting squirrels with the red-tail. And so that's just kind of, I mean, that's some excitement all in itself, really, that, just another type of falconry that a lot of people here in the Southeast US really enjoy. So that's one thing. So our club, basically, we're just a group. There's about I think 75 falconers in the state right now, and we kind of try to, yeah, it's more of like a networking group really. So we, I guess, to be a falconer, to get your license, you have to be an apprentice for 2 years, and then you kind of move up. So we, to be an apprentice, you have to have a sponsor for 2 years, like a mentor, master falconer, to kind of take you under their wing for 2 years, kind of show you the ropes. So we, and a lot of times, depending on where people live, it's hard for people to, I guess, get connected with other falconers. So that's kind of what our group does, is create networking opportunities. We have picnics. We hold like a meet in the winter where everybody kind of comes together. We all take turns hunting our birds. And then people who are interested in the sport can come, kind of see what it's really all about. Kind of paints a picture, of what falconry really is, I think, like what your film does. But a lot of people think it's, oh, I have this pet bird that follows me around all the time. It's great. But really, we kind of try to promote it more as a hunting sport. And that's really the primary use of these birds. So then, a lot of people, if they're not comfortable with hunting or, seeing a small animal die in the wild, then, they may not find out it's for them. But really, we kind of try to, create networking opportunities for people who really want to get into it, find people sponsors. We do a little bit of public education as well. We're trying to get more involved with that. Stuff like opportunities like this, just kind of talk about how it is in the state and everything. Then maybe I've done some stuff with my son's scout group, just kind of, describing that.
Will you release your red tail at the end of the season, or are you going to keep her for another year?
I'm planning. She's been a really great bird. She's the 4th red tail that I've trapped and hunted with, and all of my other ones, I've hunted with them for a season and released them in April. So, and that's probably what I'll do. I got a few other plans. I got 3 birds right now currently. So the summer months, it's not the hunting season in Kentucky is from beginning of September to end of March. So once small game season's over, you can't legally hunt them or anything. So you just you fatten them up for the summer and kind of let them go through the molt, and then you get the next fall. So my plan is to release my red tail.
I think that's one of the really fascinating parts of falconry that I wish we could have gotten into a little bit more in our film, but there's a lot you can't cover. But that it's this, you're borrowing the bird from the wild. Mm-hmm. That you're taking this wild creature, partnering with it, and then releasing it. Now it's a little bit of a better hunter. It's probably well fed. It's strong, and you're not stealing it. You're not, it's a very symbiotic thing with nature.
It is really, and it's not, like a lot of people think, oh, I'm teaching this bird to hunt. I'm getting it. I'm making, it's more like you're training it to basically let you watch it hunt. I mean, you're getting it there. You're giving it more opportunities to be successful in hunting. You're feeding it on days that it's not successful. You're getting it through its first winter, which a lot of red tails, they're not as successful in their first winter. They say like 80-90% don't make it, through their first winter, just for various reasons. But so you're giving those birds those opportunities to be successful, and then hopefully releasing it, a better bird and more healthy and ready for just, it's new life in the wild, I guess.
We barely touch on it. Another thing that we, don't touch on as much as we would like in the film, but I think is important to us and was interesting to us, is sort of the partnership between falconry and conservation, both species conservation. It was falconers who saved the peregrine falcon from going extinct in the United States, but also land conservation, prairie conservation, and things like retrofitting power lines so that they don't electrocute so many birds of prey. And it's oftentimes, those sort of issues came into the film because we saw them in practical ways. At one point, there's a dart flew off of Lauren's wrist in pursuit of something, and he landed on a big giant power line. And if he had landed on the wrong part of the power line, he was going to be electrocuted. And if he flew off the wrong way, he was going to be electrocuted. And it was extremely scary. But then when we learned it was like $25 to change to put the cap or whatever it is that it needs on the power line. And we thought, oh my gosh, like this is crazy that there are all of these birds being electrocuted all over the place when we could change the lines. So I think it's a really interesting relationship. That what is in Kentucky, what are the big sort of conservation projects that you all find yourselves in the weeds with?
I don't know, Jerry, any thoughts?
Probably the Kestrel boxes mostly. I know you and your son scout group have made quite a few, and the Kentucky clubs kind of funded that. And there's a couple other members making them now for local wildlife agencies here.
And those are just like nesting boxes?
Nesting boxes, yeah. And I've given them to, my son's group. I had my Kestrel out and we built some nesting boxes, and then I gave them to Fish and Wildlife Service. And they're going to go and install them in different wildlife management areas. So,
because Kestrels need old trees and preferably dead ones that have large cavities, and we tend to cut those down because they fall on our cars. So nesting opportunities have gone down quite a bit for them here.
It's one of the things I think Americans maybe take for granted a little bit is actually how much wildlife we still have. If you go to places like the United Arab Emirates, even Italy, even Scotland, they don't just have random woods on the side of the road the way we do. Huge swaths of national and state parks. They don't have it. The United States is pretty much unique in that way. And it would be great to, for everybody to appreciate that when you're driving alongside the road and you just see this empty, quote unquote, woods. It's not empty, it's full of life. It's full of life and death and all of these things going on. And that's unique to this country. And I'm sure Kentucky is not an exception.
No, we have a great, public land, state park system. We have a lot of, big woods and stuff around here. I mean, unfortunately, Jared's out in Western Kentucky, the western part of the state. Not as much wood. Talk about what kind of hunting and birds you hunt with, Jared.
We actually, that's one of the nice things about falconry is you don't necessarily have to get out of city limits and way away. So some of my best fields are right behind apartment complexes, and it's unfortunate to see them slowly disappear as the buildings move out. But you'll find coyotes and squirrels and rabbits and everything living right amongst people. And it provides for some interesting hunting opportunities and interactions with people who didn't know falconry existed. Thankfully, out of the thousands I've had in the last 6 years, maybe one or two people have been upset. Everyone else has thought it was really cool. I had quite a few people come out and hunt with us later, or just join us in the middle of walking their dog.
Yeah, it's interesting.
With a Kestrel, by the way?
This usually with red tails.
Okay.
Well, and people have seen me doing that and always thought it was really cool. But with our red tails, our Harris hawks, and we'll be out hunting behind an apartment complex and flying rabbits. And we had
the thing, the thing about hunting with a raptor is you can, a lot of the public wildlife management areas and stuff where public hunting, gun hunting is allowed.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the season, game's kind of thinned out by that time, but falconry kind of allows you to go hunt in areas where you can't go hunt with a gun. Like behind apartment complexes, or we have some land around my place that's owned by the airport, but it's just left forested land that I can go hunt squirrels in. And it's so that does have its advantages, but you do get more exposure to the public that way, and generally it's always a positive response, and sometimes they'll even invite you over to their place to get more land to hunt, really.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, the sort of what you said about, of the thousands of people that you've encountered, you've had only a couple sort of object or sort of be uncomfortable. And it's so interesting to me that we have this relationship with the food on our table that is so false right now because we're so divorced from how it gets to us. Yet the act of hunting, even with a wild animal who needs to kill to eat, like, let's be real, if they don't kill in the wild, they die. It's just part of the way that life is, it can make people extremely uncomfortable and bring up all of these other conversations. And one thing that we don't address it directly in the film, with the exception of it being part of the life cycle, but it is interesting for us right now as filmmakers, introducing a film about hunting has been more difficult sometimes than we thought that it might be. You know, we know that falconry and falconers are hunters, but it seems to us like a completely different thing than you know, other kinds of hunting where you're using a machine or a bow and arrow. This is hunting where your chances are even less.
It's spectating, right?
It's
You're
spectating,
watching
right? Like,
you're watching a predator do what it does naturally.
Well, and I don't think you guys didn't center the film on, you know, who's going to get the most kills or how many. It was like how, you know, it wasn't a film full of dead animals and go. It was a good stories about the falconers and, you know, the kind of progression of the birds, the training process, and kind of how, you know how they go from, you know, how their successes with their,
well, you know,
with their hunting.
to be honest, even if we'd wanted to make a film about all the kills, it would have been a pretty short film.
Right.
we didn't have, I mean, in Azerbaijan, we had more choice in terms of the success rate because there were just the numbers, but not even there. I mean,
not even there.
We know that there were successes in the field those days that we didn't happen to be there for because hey, I caught this amazing hubara, blah, blah, and you're like, oh, great, we were with the wrong brother.
We also wanted to portray it the way the falconer sees it, which is he or she releases the bird, and then whatever happens is happening pretty far away. It's not like all of a sudden the camera shows up and you see this giant bird come in. It's like that's not reality. So basically, you know, there's a release, potentially there's some action or a sound, and then you go up and you find what's going on, but it's not like you're right there with it. And it became, I think, pretty natural to us. But like Elisabeth was saying, when we've introduced this film to some, you know, film people, and they see this in the very beginning of the movie, you know, an eagle take out what it hunts, it feels very uncomfortable to them. And maybe that's a good thing for the film because it is nature, and we've all got to come to terms with that's the way it's set up.
Yeah. So we are almost at an hour mark. So I'm gonna ask just one final question of all four of you. It's one of my favorite questions. We'll start with Jared because you're down in my bottom corner here and move around in a circle. What is one question about falconry that you wish people asked you, but you never get asked? And we're gonna go around. So just keep thinking about it.
Probably, you know, question that they get asked most is, you know, why can't you keep them as a pet is probably the number one question I do get. And I wish people would be more open to the idea of why is it so important for them to hunt? You know, you guys kind of showed it in the film with Miles, the golden eagle. He had some mental issues until he got hunting and started doing that, and that smoothed him out. And I've met that eagle a couple times, and you know, at the beginning he was a little crazy, and towards the end I mean, for an eagle he's a sweetheart. You know, it's a very relative term to say that, but you know, there's still a raptor. And wish people would consider more how important it is for these birds to hunt for their mental well-being.
Tyler, what about you?
Probably it.
I don't know. I kind of always think about like really how has falconry kind of affected the rest of your life, really, and kind of help you, you know, in other areas. And for me, like, I mean, other than it taking up a lot of time and, you know, telling people it takes up a lot of your, you know, time to get out every day and care for the birds, but really it just kind of, I don't know, it really, it's sometimes amongst like all the chaos, it can be a very peaceful experience when it's just, you know, you and the bird. And it's taught me basically, I wanted to be a wildlife biologist growing up. I wanted, you know, to try, I wanted to be Steve Irwin, you know, life career choices that doesn't always happen. So falconry, getting into that, I did 5 years ago. That's kind of let me revisit that now. And I'm kind of living my dream that way by being, you know, not professionally, but still getting to interact with these animals all the time. And just, I mean, something to be around. And I mean, it's taught me, I guess, discipline, patience. I mean, sometimes, you know, you're on a hot streak, everything's going well. And then, you know, sometimes, you know, things aren't aren't going so well, they can just kind of all crumble, or, you know, things will seem bad a whole lot of time. And then all of a sudden, you know, you have a success and it just all kind of comes together. So really, it's just taught me persistence and, you know, setting goals just to keep working at it, really. And that's something, you know, we can kind of use every day with other aspects of our life, really. So.
Elisabeth, what do you feel?
You know, I can't speak to a question about falconry necessarily, but
or just like as a filmmaker.
You know, I think a question that doesn't come up directly, but one that sort of lingers in the background is sort of about why we felt it was important to actually connect all these people across cultures. And, you know, although I say we're not an activist film, I think that in another life, both Revere and I were born to be diplomats. For us, that this is a story as much about sort of a global relationship as it is about an individual relationship. And we're so used to stories that put walls between us instead of unite us, that I'm very happy and excited that the film is just starting its international festival rollout now. And to be able to connect with an audience in Italy is going to be very different than connecting with an audience in Dubai. So I'm excited to see how it rolls out in those places, but also the opportunity that the film presented to me on a personal level to go to all these places and see these remarkable birds and meet these remarkable characters, and then be able to find a way to connect them and make a story about our global relationship with nature and the wild was really an honor. Now you're last, haha.
Well, I mean, I would take that and do the physical metaphor of that, which is that when we would scout for locations to film, I would go on Google, you know, satellite view, and look for large swaths of green or gold or whatever. And then you'd see this road coming through this way and a road coming through that way. And you'd go, oh, only if I could just erase that little road there and connect this with this, with this, with this. You know, and those are called wild ways or wild freeways. And it's an effort that's going on, that there are these little tiny pockets of wilderness. And that if we are smart about it, we can start to connect those and get bigger ranges, just like people. You know, if we can just remove these little things and put people together, we can get bigger swaths.
That's so great. Thank you guys all for being here with us today. Like I said, I know we're all sad we can't be together in person and stuck in our little boxes here, but hopefully soon. If you ever come up to Kentucky, please reach out. We'd love to have you back. I'm sure the Falconry Association would also love to have you attend one of their picnics soon if you're ever able to travel up this way. We'd love to have you. They're in North Carolina, Tyler and Jared, just in case, or go see them.
Not too far then.
Not too far.
Thank you so much for just this film, putting it together, the conservation aspect of it, just the cinematography of it. You know, we're an art center, which always is fun to connect all of these external things that are happening in our world back to our central focus, which is art. And I think that everything has that as a part of it. Thank you to Jim and Jeanette for being with us, our educators. We can't wait to share this conversation with your students. Thank you guys so much again.
Can I just chime in real quick that if people want to go to overlandmovie.com, maybe you're going that direction.
No.
We really love follow-up questions to know what struck people, or questions or comments. So it's very easy. You just log on there. There's a little form you can fill out, and one of us will get back to you.
And I was going to say, do you guys want to plug where you can see your film next? Is it touring?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, we're on the sort of virtual film festival circuit right now. We have a sort of slow immediate period. We're playing in a festival in San Francisco in April, and then we'll be making our second in-person, hallelujah, hopefully, premiere. You know, the film premiered a year ago and change in Santa Barbara, and we had 4 screenings and it was packed and it was amazing. And then the pandemic hit, and it's been really hard on us to not be able to do those things. But in Ferrara in Italy, there's a festival that's happening in May, and that's our next. We're planning to go and be there. Giovanni will be there, and we're very excited to see how the film plays in Italy, because you can't tell here, but there's a lot of regional politics in Italy that are going to shade the way that Giovanni is seen by his fellow countrymen, and it will be a real experiment to see what unfolds in that scenario. But hopefully Italy will get the virus a little bit under control and come out of lockdown, and the festival can happen in person.
When it's available to American audiences, we'll let you guys know. But right now, it's still rolling out.
Yeah, no, it's so exciting. We're so honored to be able to have it and show it, and also connect a little locally to it as well. It also, I was like, oh, we have the Falconry Association. This is so great. So it's been able to educate me and all the folks here. And we wish you all the best of luck. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And we'll all keep in touch with each other now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bye. It was nice to meet everyone.
Thank you guys so much.